The text notification made my stomach knot as I read the message from my brother, Logan. Can't wait to hear about all your pro bono cases defending criminals, Mia. Maybe you'll finally admit law school was wasted on you. I stared at the words, a mix of irritation and dread bubbling up. Logan had always had a knack for poking at my insecurities. The family reunion invitation lay on my kitchen counter, its calligraphy mocking me with cheerful lies about celebration and bonding. What it really promised was passive-aggressive jabs and judgment masquerading as concern. You could just skip it, my colleague and best friend Lucas suggested, setting a fresh coffee on my desk. His years of listening to my family drama had made him an expert in delivering unsolicited but solid advice. And give Logan the satisfaction? Never. I took a sip, savoring the bitter warmth. Besides, skipping would put me on Mom's eternal guilt trip list. Lucas leaned casually against the doorframe of my corner office. You could always tell them the truth. Partner at McAllister and Associates is nothing to hide. I shook my head, watching the city lights flicker to life beyond my floor-to-ceiling windows. To my family, I was still Mia Bradford, the idealistic public defender, scraping by and clinging to her bleeding heart ideals. The truth, that I'd joined one of the top firms in the city and had become their youngest partner at 33, wasn't something I'd ever shared. Not with my family, not with Logan. It was complicated. Yes, I'd started my career as a public defender and had been proud of the work. But 5 years ago, my boss, Amanda McAllister, had seen potential in me during a high-profile case. It had been an opportunity I couldn't pass up. But Logan wouldn't understand. He never did. My phone buzzed again. This time it was Mom. Honey, please try to keep the peace tomorrow. Your brother's going through a lot right now. I rolled my eyes and handed the phone to Lucas, letting him read the text. Going through a lot? I scoffed. He's going through a divorce because he couldn't keep his hands off his secretary. Hardly a tragedy. Lucas raised an eyebrow. Speaking of which, have you heard who's handling his wife's case? Before I could answer, my assistant, Sarah, poked her head into the office. Ms. Bradford, your mother is here. Mom swept in like a perfectly coiffed hurricane, her designer handbag swinging. Mia, darling, I thought we could have lunch before tomorrow's reunion. Lucas mouthed good luck as he made a strategic retreat. Mom, I'm working. You can't just show up unannounced. She perched herself in one of my client chairs, eyeing my pristine office. This doesn't look like the tiny public defender's office you're always talking about. I'm covering for a friend, I lied smoothly, the same excuse I'd been using for years. Her polished facade cracked slightly. It's about Logan. His divorce. It's going to get messy. His wife has hired some high-powered firm. Which one? I asked, feigning indifference while my pulse quickened. McAllister and Associates, I think. Amanda something or other. Mom clasped her hands, her voice low. Logan says they're ruthless. He's beside himself. You know how fragile he is right now. I stifled a laugh. Fragile. Logan had spent years belittling me and flaunting his successes. If only Mom knew. Maybe he should have thought about that before sleeping with his 24-year-old assistant, I said, unable to keep the edge from my voice. Mia! Mom's eyes widened. He made a mistake. We all make mistakes. Yes, but not all of us destroy our marriages in the process, I shot back, before reining in my temper. Fine. I'll keep the peace tomorrow, as long as he does. That's all I ask. Mom stood, smoothing her dress. And darling, maybe wear something professional tomorrow. That navy suit you used to have was nice. I glanced down at my Armani pantsuit and Louboutin heels, pieces that cost more than Logan's car payment. Sure, Mom, I said with a tight smile. After she left, I turned to my computer and pulled up the firm's current case files. Sure enough, there it was. Natalie Carter vs. Logan Bradford. The lead attorney on Natalie's case, Amanda McAllister, with me as the assigned partner. As if on cue, my phone buzzed with another message from Logan. Hope you're ready for tomorrow, sis. Got some big news to share. Time to show everyone what real success looks like. I leaned back in my chair, a slow smile spreading across my face. "Oh, Logan," I whispered to the empty office. "You have no idea what's coming." The family reunion was in full swing by the time I arrived at the lavish country club Mom had rented for the evening. The room buzzed with laughter, clinking glasses, and the low hum of polite conversations. Crystal chandeliers sparkled overhead, casting a golden glow over impeccably dressed relatives. I scanned the crowd, steeling myself for the inevitable. "There's my favorite failure," Logan's voice boomed across the room before I even had a chance to grab a drink. He was already 3 glasses deep, his designer suit slightly rumpled, his grin sharper than the knives waiting on the carving station. "Logan," I greeted evenly, plucking a champagne flute off a passing server's tray. "How's life saving the world one criminal at a time?" he asked, loud enough for the surrounding relatives to hear. "Still living on a shoestring budget and holding on to that noble cause nonsense?" I took a deliberate sip, letting the effervescence roll over my tongue before replying. "Actually, I've moved on from criminal defense." His eyebrows shot up in exaggerated surprise. "Oh, finally admitted defeat, huh? About time." Before I could respond, Mom appeared between us, her voice soothing but tinged with worry. "Children, please. Logan, maybe slow down on the drinks. We're here to celebrate, not argue." "I'm celebrating, Mom." Logan threw an arm around her shoulders. "And besides, I'm just getting started. Have you told Mia my big news yet?" "I was just about to," Mom said, shooting me a quick warning glance. Logan puffed up like a peacock. "My company's merging with one of the biggest tech firms in the country, millions on the table. This time next year, I'll be on the cover of Forbes. Real success, Mia. Not the feel-good kind you can't pay your bills with." The crowd murmured their approval, and I felt the familiar burn of frustration rise in my chest. I gritted my teeth and forced a smile, knowing my moment would come. A commotion near the entrance caught my attention. I turned just as Lucas, tablet in hand, waved me over from the doorway. "Excuse me," I murmured, escaping Logan's smug grin. In the hallway, Lucas handed me the tablet, his expression grim. "You need to see this." The headline made my blood run cold. Tech CEO Logan Bradford faces insider trading allegations amid nasty divorce beneath it. A subheading: Claims of illegal trades and offshore accounts surface as the divorce battle intensifies. "This just broke," Lucas said quietly. Through the doors, I could still hear Logan holding court. "The merger is going to make us millions. To success." My eyes scanned the article, my pulse quickening with each sentence. Natalie, his soon-to-be ex-wife, had provided evidence to the SEC. The words emails, phone records, and shell companies jumped off the page like neon signs. "That's not all," Lucas said, swiping to another tab. "Look who's representing him." My stomach sank as I read the name. Jacob Thorne, Logan's attorney. Jacob wasn't just any lawyer. He was the one who'd tried to poach one of my biggest clients last year, dismissing me as just a public defender playing in corporate law. "Perfect," I muttered. "Of course it's him." My phone buzzed in my pocket. "Amanda." I answered on the first ring. "Tell me you've seen the news," she said without preamble. "I'm looking at it now." "This changes everything," she continued. "The insider trading allegations are huge. If you want to recuse yourself—" "No," I interrupted, my voice firm. "I'm staying on." Back in the banquet room, Logan's voice carried above the crowd. "My sister, bless her heart, means well, but let's be honest. Public defenders are where lawyers go when they can't hack it in the real world." Lucas touched my arm. "You okay?" I handed him the tablet, straightening my shoulders. 5 years ago, when Amanda offered me a job, Logan told me I'd never survive in corporate law. Said I didn't have the killer instinct. Now? I smirked. Now, he's about to find out how wrong he was. I pulled out my phone to find 3 missed calls from Mom. I ignored them and turned to Lucas. "Speaking of which, what do you think I should wear to Monday's meeting?" Lucas grinned. Something expensive. I adjusted my posture, the confidence settling into my spine. Very, very expensive. As I walked back into the room, Logan's voice carried again, this time louder and more slurred. To my incredible success, and to my sister, still fighting the good fight in her tiny little public defender office. I raised my glass in his direction, the beginnings of a smile tugging at my lips. In less than 48 hours, his world was going to implode, and I'd have a front row seat. Monday morning came faster than I anticipated, bringing with it an edge of inevitability. The air felt charged, as though the universe itself knew the day would be a turning point. I stood in front of the mirror, adjusting the crimson Chanel suit I'd chosen, powerful, bold, and intimidating. Every inch of me looked the part of a corporate attorney prepared to go to battle. In the office, Amanda stood in her usual no-nonsense stance, flipping through a thick folder. "The Morrison case is straightforward," she said, handing me the final notes. "Don't let Thorne try to rattle you." "Does he ever stop trying?" I replied, tucking the notes into my bag. She smirked. "You've got this. It's his style to underestimate people, which makes it even sweeter when you run circles around him." I nodded, knowing this wasn't about the Morrison case, not really. The real storm would hit during the afternoon's divorce meeting. 2 hours later, the courtroom gavel fell with a satisfying crack. "Motion granted in favor of the plaintiff," the judge announced, her words wrapping up a clean win for my client. Amanda clapped a hand on my shoulder as we walked out of the courtroom. "Brilliant as always," she said. "Now are you ready for this afternoon?" Before I could answer, my phone buzzed. Logan's name flashed across the screen, accompanied by yet another text. "Meeting with my hotshot lawyers today. Gonna crush this divorce thing. Wish you had the skills to see a real lawyer in action." I laughed softly to myself, shaking my head. Logan's arrogance had always been his Achilles heel. Today, he'd learned just how much of a liability that could be. Back at the office, my assistant, Mia, appeared in my doorway, looking unusually nervous. "Natalie Carter is here for your 11 o'clock. I nodded and gestured for her to let Natalie in. Natalie entered with the kind of poise and precision that only came from years of living in Logan's curated world. Her perfectly tailored dress and sleek hair screamed polished perfection, but her eyes betrayed something else, a simmering anger, tempered by fear. She extended her hand, her voice steady. "I didn't realize you were—" She gestured vaguely. "Logan always said you were struggling." I smiled tightly, gesturing for her to sit. "Yes, he loves that story. But you hired us because we're the best. My relationship with Logan doesn't change that." Amanda entered moments later, her expression as sharp as ever. She placed a thick folder on the table and dove straight in. "Let's talk about the insider trading allegations." Natalie hesitated before pulling out her phone. "I found emails 3 months ago. He was using information from board meetings to tip off investors. The merger isn't what everyone thinks it is." "Does Logan know you have this evidence?" I asked, my voice calm despite the storm brewing inside me. "No," she said, sliding her phone across the table to show us screenshots. "He thinks I'm just after the money. He doesn't realize how deep this goes." Amanda scanned the screenshots, her mouth tightening. "This is solid. Have you shown this to anyone else?" "Just a friend at the SEC," Natalie said quietly. "She told me to get a lawyer right away." Before we could continue, my assistant poked her head in again. "Jacob Thorne is here. He's early for the 2 o'clock meeting and making a scene in reception." "Of course he is," I muttered, rising from my chair. "Natalie, if you'll excuse us for a moment." In the reception area, Jacob stood in his usual posture of self-assured arrogance, his expensive suit tailored to perfection. "Where's Amanda?" he barked, clearly irritated. "She's in another meeting," I replied smoothly. "You'll be dealing with me." His eyes swept over me dismissively. "And you are?" "Elena Bradford," I said, allowing a slow, cold smile to spread. "Managing partner for this case." His expression faltered for a fraction of a second before narrowing in suspicion. Bradford? Yes, I replied coolly, enjoying his discomfort. Any other questions, or shall we move to the conference room? Behind him, the elevator dinged, and Logan stepped out. His smirk froze when he saw me. Elena? His voice wavered as he looked between me and Jacob. What are you doing here? Working, I replied simply. Conference room 3 is ready. Logan grabbed Jacob's arm, whispering frantically, Why is my sister here? Jacob looked equally baffled. Managing partner, he muttered under his breath. I turned to face Logan fully, letting the weight of my authority settle between us. Because, dear brother, I'm the attorney handling your wife's divorce case. Logan's face drained of color. You're kidding. No, Logan. My voice was calm, almost gentle. This is what I do now. Let's get started, shall we? Logan stumbled slightly, his usual confidence unraveling. This is ridiculous. Jacob, do something. Perhaps, Amanda said, appearing beside me like a hawk ready to swoop. We should begin by discussing the evidence Natalie has provided. The emails alone are fascinating reading. Logan's swagger was gone. Emails? What emails? I gestured toward the open conference room door. All will be explained. Please, take a seat. As he reached for his phone, his hand shook. The tables had turned, and Logan knew it. The conference room felt like a pressure cooker, the air heavy with unspoken tension. Logan sat at the table, flanked by Jacob and a nervous-looking junior associate who seemed out of his depth. Amanda and I took our seats across from them, Natalie beside me, calm, but visibly resolute. Jacob cleared his throat, his attempt at authority falling flat. Before we begin, my client has prepared a statement. Save it, Amanda cut in smoothly. We're here to discuss numbers and criminal liability. Logan's head snapped up. Criminal liability? This is a divorce settlement. Was, I said, sliding a thick folder across the table. Until these surfaced. The junior associate opened the folder, his face blanching as he read through the documents. Jacob leaned over, skimming the pages quickly before whispering something frantic to Logan. Logan's gaze darted to me, a mixture of anger and desperation in his eyes. What did you give them, Natalie? Everything, she said quietly, her voice steady. The emails, the offshore accounts, the phone records, all of it. Logan's jaw tightened, his usual bravado failing him. You vindictive bit. Choose your next words carefully, I interrupted sharply. This meeting is being recorded. Amanda leaned back, arms crossed. We can discuss settlement terms now, or you can wait for the SEC to come knocking. Your choice. Jacob cleared his throat again, his confidence visibly shaken. We need to discuss parameters. Parameters? Amanda let out a dry laugh. Your client committed securities fraud. The only parameters we're discussing are how much prison time he's facing. Prison? Logan's voice cracked. This is insane! Elena, you're my sister. I met his panicked gaze head-on. Funny how you only remember we're family when you need something. The door opened, and my assistant stepped in, handing me a note. I glanced at it, my stomach twisting. Mom's in the lobby, I announced flatly. Logan's face lit up, his hope bordering on smugness. Yes, let her in. She'll talk sense into you. I nodded to my assistant, and moments later, Mom swept in, her presence as commanding as ever. She wore what I called her fixing things outfit, a tailored blazer, perfectly coiffed hair, and an air of practiced diplomacy. This has gone far enough, she declared, her voice sharp as her heels clicked against the floor. Elena, you're dropping this case immediately. Amanda raised an eyebrow. Actually, she's not. And who are you? Mom snapped. Amanda stood, extending her hand. Amanda McAllister, founding partner of this firm, and your daughter is one of our most valuable partners. Mom's face faltered, her composure cracking ever so slightly. Partner? Surprise, I said dryly. Turns out the struggling public defender did okay for herself. Mom sank into an empty chair, looking between me and Logan, trying to piece together what she'd clearly missed. All this time, I confirmed. I let Logan spin his little narrative because it was easier than fighting it, but now, I turned to my brother, who looked increasingly cornered. Now, he's crossed a line family can't fix. The SEC will be here in 20 minutes, Amanda added, her tone clipped. This is your last chance for a deal. Jacob leaned over to whisper furiously in Logan's ear. Logan's face cycled through a storm of emotions, rage, fear, defiance, before finally settling on defeat. What are your terms? He asked quietly. Full financial disclosure, Amanda began. 70% of all assets go to Natalie. You admit to insider trading, cooperate fully with the SEC investigation, and take whatever plea deal they offer. That's insane, Mom snapped. Logan, don't you dare! Mom, stop, Logan said hollowly, his voice barely above a whisper. She has everything. The emails, the trades, the shell companies, it's over. She's your sister. She can't testify against you, Mom protested. Siblings can absolutely testify against each other, I corrected. And I will. The room fell silent except for the faint ticking of the wall clock. Finally, Logan reached for the settlement papers with trembling hands. You've won, he said bitterly, not meeting my eyes. You've finally proven you're better than me. Happy? This was never about being better than you, I replied quietly. It was about being better than what you thought I was. He signed the papers, his movements robotic. When he finished, Amanda gathered the documents, her expression impassive. The SEC agents will be here shortly, she said. I suggest you cooperate fully. It might mean the difference between 5 years and 10. Logan stood, his legs unsteady beneath him. I need some air before they arrive. Don't even think about running, Jacob muttered under his breath. It'll only make things worse. Logan paused beside my chair as he headed for the door. For what it's worth, he said softly. I was wrong about you. You're not just a killer lawyer, you're ruthless. No, I corrected, meeting his gaze. I'm just not afraid of you anymore. He nodded once, then left, his shoulders slumped. Mom stayed behind, her face etched with anger and disbelief. I hope this was worth destroying our family, she said, before following Logan out. Natalie touched my arm, her voice soft. Thank you, for everything. I watched through the glass as Logan stood by the elevators, his world crumbling around him. For years he'd torn me down, made me feel small. Now, he looked broken. Amanda's voice broke my thoughts. You okay? I straightened my posture, gathering my papers. Ask me again when this is over. For now, let's finish this. The elevator doors closed behind Logan, and I turned back to my work, knowing this was the beginning of a very different future, for all of us. The news broke early the next morning. Tech CEO Logan Bradford faces SEC investigation amid divorce settlement. Logan's corporate headshot was plastered across every financial website and news outlet, his once proud grin now a painful reminder of his downfall. At the office, my phone buzzed relentlessly with messages and calls, most of which I ignored. I knew the drill. Scandals like this didn't just blow over, they grew legs, dragging anyone in their path with them. Your brother's in the lobby, Lucas said, appearing in my doorway with a coffee in hand. I looked up sharply. What does he want? Help, I think. Lucas shrugged. He looks rough. Reluctantly, I grabbed my jacket and headed downstairs. Logan sat slumped on a leather bench in the lobby, looking like a shadow of his former self. Gone were the sharp suits and smug confidence. He wore khakis and a wrinkled polo, his face haggard. They froze my accounts, he said without looking up. All of them, even the ones I thought were untouchable. That's standard procedure, I replied evenly. It's what happens in fraud cases. He let out a bitter laugh. Jacob dropped me as a client, said I'm too toxic, even Mom's not answering my calls. He glanced up at me, his eyes bloodshot. What am I supposed to do? I crossed my arms. You cooperate. Fully. That's the only way you stand a chance of reducing your sentence. You don't get it, he said, his voice rising in desperation. This is my life, Mia. My reputation. I'm ruined. No, Logan, I said sharply. You ruined yourself. You broke the law, repeatedly, and thought you were untouchable. Now, you're paying the price. He flinched, and for a moment, the fight seemed to leave him entirely. Do you know what the worst part is? He asked quietly. All those years I mocked you, tore you down. You were becoming everything I pretended to be. Successful, respected, powerful. And I hated you for it. I froze, caught off guard by his sudden candor. I was jealous, he continued, his voice raw. You knew who you were, what you stood for. I was so busy chasing an image, I forgot to actually be good at anything real. The elevator dinged, and Amanda stepped out, followed by 2 SEC agents. They approached Logan, their presence a stark reminder of what lay ahead. Mr. Bradford, one of them called. We have some follow-up questions. Logan's shoulders sagged. He glanced at me one last time, his voice barely audible. You're still looking out for me, aren't you? You're still my brother, I replied simply. But that doesn't mean I can save you from yourself. The agents led him away, and as the conference room doors closed behind them, Amanda stepped beside me. Your mother's giving interviews, she said softly, her voice tinged with frustration. She's claiming you manipulated the evidence to destroy Logan. Of course she is. I glanced at my phone, which buzzed with another incoming call from Mom. Amanda placed a reassuring hand on my shoulder. The partners want to release a statement supporting you. No, I said firmly, watching the closed doors. Let the evidence speak for itself. My phone buzzed again, this time a text from Natalie. Just saw the news. Are you okay? Before I could respond, the elevator opened, and Jacob Thorne strode out, heading straight for me. His face was tight with anger. You've made a powerful enemy, he growled. I raised an eyebrow. Threatening opposing counsel? Bold choice for someone facing potential conspiracy charges. His face reddened, but before he could respond, Amanda stepped in. Save it for the ethics board. I believe they're very interested in your involvement. Jacob stormed off, nearly colliding with Lucas, who was approaching with a fresh cup of coffee. Your mom's on line 1, Lucas said, handing me the cup. Let it ring, I replied, turning back to my office. Through the glass conference room window, I could see Logan slumped in his chair, his head in his hands. For years he'd torn me down, mocking my every success, dismissing my work as insignificant. Now, the tables had turned. Lucas's voice cut through my thoughts. Was it worth it? I stared at Logan through the glass, watching the SEC agents present more evidence. His shoulders shook slightly, the weight of his choices finally bearing down on him. Ask me in 10 years, I said quietly, turning away from the window. Right now, I have work to do. My phone buzzed again, a final text from Mom. Your father would be ashamed. I typed back 3 simple words before silencing my phone. No, he wouldn't. The prison visiting room smelled like industrial cleaner and stale coffee. 3 years into his 5-year sentence, Logan looked smaller than I remembered. His beige jumpsuit hung loosely on his frame, and the cocky grin he used to wear like armor was long gone. You cut your hair, he said by way of greeting, his voice quiet. And you grew a beard, I replied, gesturing to the scruff on his face. It suits you. He chuckled softly, a sound that carried more self-awareness than I'd ever thought him capable of. Not much choice in here. There was an awkward pause as he fiddled with the sleeve of his jumpsuit. Thanks for coming. I wasn't sure you would. Your letter was convincing, I said, folding my hands on the table between us. He nodded, his gaze darting around the room. Mom finally stopped sending money to my commissary account. I know, I said. She called me about it. His eyebrows shot up. You two are talking again? I nodded. We had lunch last week. She admitted she might have been wrong about a few things. Logan leaned forward, lowering his voice. "Is it true what I heard about Jacob Thorne?" 17 years, I confirmed. Turns out he was running schemes with half a dozen other clients. Your cooperation helped bring that to light. "Karma's a bitch," he muttered, then caught himself. "Sorry, I'm trying to be better about everything." I smiled faintly. "The prison therapist you mentioned in your letter." "Dr. Chen," he said with a small nod. "She's the one who suggested I reach out to you. Said I needed to stop blaming others for my choices." A guard walked past, and we both fell silent until he was out of earshot. Logan shifted in his seat. "I saw your name in the paper. That big civil rights case you won." "You're following my cases?" I asked, surprised. "Everyone I can find," he admitted. "Turns out the prison library gets all the major papers. I've become quite the legal scholar." "Better late than never," I said, half teasing. "Yeah," he replied, rubbing the back of his neck. "Listen, I've been practicing what to say to you for months. Can I just—" He took a deep breath. I was jealous. I tilted my head, waiting for him to continue. "Not just of your success, but of your integrity," he said, his voice steady but raw. "You knew who you were, what you stood for. I was so busy chasing this image of success that I forgot to actually be good at anything real." I studied him for a moment, trying to reconcile the brother sitting across from me with the man who had spent years tearing me down. "What I did was wrong," he continued. "The fraud, yes. But also the way I treated you, the way I made you feel small. I did it because I felt small, and I'm sorry." The words hung between us, heavy with years of history and unspoken pain. "Natalie got remarried," I said finally, breaking the silence. "I know," he said, a faint smile tugging at his lips. "To that kindergarten teacher, right? Good for her. She deserves to be happy." The bell signaling the end of visiting hours rang, cutting through the room. Logan fidgeted, clearly not ready for the conversation to end. "Before you go," he said quickly, pulling a folded piece of paper from his pocket, "I made this for you." It was a hand-drawn blueprint of a bicycle, meticulously detailed. I recognized it immediately. It was the same model I'd learned to ride on as a kid. "Thought maybe—" He hesitated, his voice faltering. "Maybe when I get out I could build one for your kid." I stared at him, my breath catching. "How did you know?" He shrugged, a small smile breaking through. "Mom mentioned you've been sick in the mornings. I can do math." "I haven't told anyone at work yet," I said softly. "Your secret's safe with me." Logan stood as the guard approached. "For what it's worth, you're going to be an amazing mom. You always were better at taking care of people than I was." I tucked the blueprint into my bag, fighting the lump rising in my throat. "You know," I said, standing, "they have a law library here. Could always use some pro bono help with research if you're interested." His face lit up with genuine surprise. "Really?" "You said you've been following my cases," I replied with a smirk. "Might as well make yourself useful." The guard cleared his throat, and Logan nodded, his expression softening. "Thanks for coming, for listening, for everything." "That's what big sisters do," I said. "No," he replied, his voice firm. "That's what good people do. I'm just sorry it took me so long to see that." As I gathered my things, he called after me one last time. "Hey, Mia?" I turned back. "When the baby comes, will you tell them about me?" I smiled, tears threatening but held at bay. "I'll tell them their uncle is learning to be brave enough to face the truth. That sometimes, the hardest victories are the ones we win over ourselves." He smiled back, faint but genuine, still talking like a lawyer. "And still your sister," I replied. I walked out of the prison, one hand resting on my stomach, thinking about cycles breaking and new beginnings. My phone buzzed, a reminder from Lucas about a deposition tomorrow. Life would keep moving, justice and consequences spinning forward, but something inside me had shifted. It wasn't forgiveness, not entirely, but it was understanding. and sometimes that was enough. As I drove away, the blueprint in my bag felt like a promise, not of perfection, but of possibility. Sometimes, that's all we can ask for. A chance to keep moving forward, no matter how many times we've fallen. Story 2. The fact that Rebecca has just finished high school, which is starkly different from Ashley's, is quite concerning. Mother, obviously disgusted, informed them. My dad nodded in agreement. Yes, he continued, and my sister, who was seated next to them, seemed to like the praises and grinned. While my sister had enrolled in a respectable university, I was now employed as a recent high school graduate. My sister had given up her time and effort to become an elite, and it seemed that her parents were proud of her. However, I pondered why there was such a sharp difference between us. The explanation was straightforward. I'm a clothes designer, named Rebecca. Right now, I'm 26 years old. I grew up in a tiny rural village where I was born. My parents, grandparents, and Ashley all lived there with me. 7 years younger than me is my sister. Ashley was cherished and the center of the family's attention. Because of this, her wishes and ideas were frequently given precedence, and I grew used to being ignored in the background. The way our parents handled us was clearly different. For instance, Ashley would get expensive toys for her birthday, while I would only get one item for my birthday, which was usually a book or educational tool that wasn't really engaging for a youngster. Our parents began going to Ashley's practices and games nearly every week after she joined the soccer team. During middle school, I participated in the tennis club as well, but my parents didn't show up for my last game. Ashley's practice required them to drive her there. My parents constantly put Ashley above me in this way. Even though I wanted to weep at times, Ashley was the one who kept me going. She would forcefully answer when our parents made comparisons between us. That is untrue. My sister is also intelligent. She is fantastic and constantly helps me with my homework. She prepared a little bouquet with flowers she picked from the neighborhood park and remarked, "Well done," a few days after my last match. Ashley showed it to me. She had become a good-hearted youngster. Our grandparents, who shared a home with us, were protective of me and frequently chastised our parents for their actions. However, my grandma died before I finished from high school, and a few days later, my grandfather followed in her footsteps. Ashley was always there for me, but our mother appeared to find it annoying. She started acting more aggressively and menacingly toward Ashley. "I'll have you stand outside if you continue to support your sister." The snow started to fall during the chilly winter months. I was forced to say this since I didn't want Ashley to endure such abuse. "I am no longer a concern for you." After that, Ashley stopped standing up for me and started concentrating on her education and athletics under our parents' roof, savoring joyful and tranquil days. Our parents were similarly impacted by our grandparents' successive deaths. They said they had no funds and readily rejected my desire to go to college. My parents disapproved of my desire to get a degree in design. Finding employment was my only option after high school. I moved away from home and joined a firm that published a tiny fashion magazine because I still wanted to work in design. I convinced my supervisor to allow me help the designers since I wanted to attempt designing, even if my primary job was clerical. It was also a reality check to work in an environment where you were constantly surrounded by the work of expert designers. But that fact just made me more driven, and my goal of being a fashion designer continued to grow every day. I spent all of my leisure time studying and rarely went home. When I went to visit, my parents greeted me with icy remarks. Rather, I dedicated my weekends to studying design, learning specific skills through online classes and other resources. I was eventually accepted as a part of the design team after the corporation acknowledged my hard work. My enthusiastic approach to work struck a chord with the nearby designers, who kindly provided me with helpful resources and contacts. I was able to take on tasks as a fully qualified fashion designer 3 years later. I learned that Ashley was getting ready for her university admission examinations 8 years after I graduated from high school and settled into my work. Her goal was to enroll in the medical school at a prominent private institution. Ashley worked hard every day to maintain her highest marks in the area, and her entrance was all but assured. I wanted to help her in any way I could because I remembered how she had helped me when I was a kid. Ashley got accepted into the esteemed medical university a few months later. I was overjoyed to learn that she had been accepted, and I congratulated her right away. "Ashley, well done. You put a lot of effort into attending school every day. Fantastic." Ashley thanked me politely, but then she raised an issue. In fact, it appears that the medical school needs a gift. It is not required, but according to Dad and Mom, it would be awkward if someone from the nation didn't pay. Therefore, it would be wiser to do so. However, you are aware that my living expenses and tuition have put a strain on our family's resources. Ashley herself offered to work part-time to help pay for her living expenses. The medical school, however, was a different matter. It was evident that part-time employment was not feasible given the quantity of study needed. However, a gift may be required. In actuality, our mother worked part-time twice a week, and our father was a typical white-collar worker, so our family's income was insufficient to cover it. Even with the tuition alone, attending a private medical school would be quite expensive. I was shocked that they had Ashley bring it up rather than asking directly, even though I suspected they could be banking on my funds. I made the decision to comply with Ashley's request and assist with the contribution and other costs required for her entrance, even though I was becoming increasingly dissatisfied with our parents. Ashley began her new life by renting an apartment close to the campus. I lived not too far from the flat, and I was always willing to lend a hand. Ashley, on the other hand, usually responded indifferently when I contacted her, suggesting that she was enjoying her time at university. Nevertheless, she would often convey requests such as, "Please send me that," or "I want to eat this." I reluctantly made deliveries and gave her the money she needed. Even though we occasionally went out to eat together, we took over the financial assistance that our parents were unable to provide. Throughout, Ashley was distant and glued to her phone, with the exception of meals. A simple was used to rebuff any effort at discussion. We barely have any real conversations since I'm too busy studying. I became more and more confused each time I came across her icy demeanor. When did we begin to drift apart in this way? It also seemed like I made her come to the supper today. I brought up a humorous topic about home, based on Ashley's attempts to shift the mood. "Mom and Dad will probably be satisfied as long as you're doing well, Ashley." Ashley gave me a chilly smirk and abruptly stopped talking when I mentioned this. "Naturally, you're a recent high school graduating designer, and I'm a well-known medical student. Your parents don't care about you." According to her, there are no qualifications needed for the position. Her scathing remarks made my heart ache. "By doesn't require a qualification, what do you mean?" I inquired. "That's exactly what I stated. You claim to be a designer, yet these days anyone can achieve that by searching online. My pals can create websites with ease as well. Doing such a job makes you feel ashamed, don't you? Perhaps you ought to at least obtain a certification." "Yes, but a high school graduate could find that challenging. I've put a lot of effort into my career. How can you act like a small version of me? Ashley, how did you fare?" My voice trembled as I spoke. Ashley clicked her tongue and gave me a frustrated glance. "Every day Mom and Dad say it. They claim that I am exceptional for being accepted into a top medical school, yet it is shameful that their oldest child just completed high school. They advise the aspiring physician to look after her sister in order to prevent her from becoming even more envious. I grudgingly call you and invite you to dinner because of this." Those words brought back memories of our early years. We had always been compared by our parents. "Rebecca is awkward, but Ashley is intelligent and trustworthy, ineffective and foolish." They would say it right in front of me. I felt suffocating as those recollections tore at my heart. Lightheaded by the shock, I dropped my head, believing I was sobbing, to bear the agony. "Well, I'll be going ahead then," Ashley remarked with a gentle snort, and hurried out of the table with her new university life. Ashley had completely changed, and her parents were always complimenting her on how brilliant all of her peers were, unlike anyone in the area. It must have given her even more self-confidence. Furthermore, our parents' daily compliments that Ashley is a true genius and will make a fantastic doctor must have bolstered her confidence beyond that. They kept making disparaging comments about me. Ashley must have been somewhat influenced by the attitudes of our parents. I wanted to celebrate my raise by booking a dinner at a nearby restaurant at the end of the year. Our parents said, "Bring Ashley home with you," when I brought it up to them. and I grudgingly accepted. Perhaps because this was Ashley's first time coming home in a long time, she appeared preoccupied with her studies and training. Our parents almost ignored me when she first arrived, concentrating only on her. At night, they brought together family members, neighbors, and even Ashley's old schoolmates who were still living in the area. A grand party started with a barbecue in the garden and a sumptuous spread of food, including pizzas that had been ordered. Today, we are here to announce that Ashley has been accepted into medical school and will become a respectable doctor in the future, my mother said, grabbing the microphone just as I was about to address the true reason for the celebration. This party was planned to celebrate my promotion. Shocked by my mother's words, I tried to correct the story, but my father stopped me. Then Ashley, energized by the gathered crowd, began boasting aloud. My mother wants me to come home more, but I'm studying at a prestigious private university, and moreover, in the medical department. So you must understand, it's not easy for me to just come home. In medical school, we often need to cooperate as a team, not just individually. So if I alone return home, it causes trouble for others. Everyone asks me for help when they don't understand something, and it's a bit overwhelming. I quietly slipped away into the kitchen, pretending to prepare the stew. However, Ashley's boastful words still reached my ears. While it was inevitable that our parents and relatives would praise Ashley, it must have been painful for the neighbors and former classmates to hear her boasting. As Ashley's monologue continued, one-sidedly, a neighbor, tired of listening, took the opportunity. When I brought some drinks to strike up a conversation. By the way, Rebecca, you're working hard in design, aren't you? But Ashley and her parents immediately shook their heads and denied it. She's trying, sort of. But not much can be expected. It's embarrassing that Rebecca is just a high school graduate. She's so different from Ashley, my mother said with a hint of disdain. My dad nodded in agreement. Yes, yes. While my sister, sitting beside them, seemed to understand that she was being praised. Displaying a proud smile in the room, there were many people who had only finished high school and were working, as well as parents with children in similar situations. While alcohol and food were being served, everyone tried to keep a composed expression, but it was evident that they were somehow enduring the situation. The only ones who seemed unaware were my parents and Ashley. I couldn't stand the unpleasant atmosphere and tried to leave without saying a word. However, Ashley stopped me. You come back home quite often, don't you? I can come back with confidence because I study hard every day. But maybe you don't mind because you lack both academic credentials and pride. Ashley laughed loudly as she said this. Even though my father said, "Hey, that's not a nice way to speak," he was laughing a little too. I was speechless at her words and felt anger welling up. Good for you, Rebecca. You don't have to come back next year. Gee, I replied with a trembling voice, cutting her off as the people around us looked on with concern. I put down my tray and grabbed my coat and bag while I was getting ready to leave. Ashley and the others were grinning and exchanging looks. If you're going to say that, I'll do as you say. I'll never come back. A volcanic rage was stirring inside me, yet all the words that came out were cold and emotionless. I no longer had any feelings for my parents or Ashley when I spat out those words. The 3 family members waved happily. Don't ever come back. On the way to the bus terminal, I was fiercely repressing the need to shout. Returning home had always been unpleasant when I was aiming to be a fashion designer. I barely visited home using my studies as an excuse, but as I evolved as a professional, I grappled with the unavoidable tie between parent and kid. Ashley is much younger and still a student. It might not be simple for her to grasp the struggles I experienced since entering the workforce. However, my parents must have toiled to some extent to raise 2 children, yet because Ashley was intellectually talented. They continued to hail her as a genius while degrading me. Their stupid comments still reverberated in my thoughts. While I felt fury, I also felt a tremendous disappointment pinching my heart. If I appreciated my job, I couldn't sustain such a relationship even if they were kin. I was outraged by Ashley's nasty behavior, yet it encouraged me to resolve to entirely sever off my contact with my parents. Several months after making this decision as a new school year was about to start, I received an unexpected call from Ashley. She has not contacted me at all since then. Additionally, she repeatedly texted, "Please answer the phone." I reluctantly took it up. "Hello, how much is my tuition?" Ashley's voice was a mixture of eagerness and dread. Calmly, I replied, "I covered your first year's tuition, the contribution, and the admittance fee." "No, I'm referring about the second year tuition. Since it hasn't been paid for this year yet, the university is advising me to do so as soon as possible." "For what purpose are you telling me this?" On the other end of the telephone, Ashley was speechless. Yes. I had paid Ashley's high tuition out of my funds. However, I just paid the first year's tuition, gift, and admittance fee. My savings had thus dropped dramatically, and I had intended to make further payments over time. Naturally, the tuition for the next years remained unpaid. It was startling that they asked for my tuition after treating me so coldly, as if we had severed our relationship. Wasn't the gift the only thing I was asked to assist with? I was being too helpful, so I simply helped with the tuition. Because they could afford the fees, didn't your parents let you attend a private university, as opposed to when I was your age? Or did you apply without considering the financial aspect? That is untrue. Yet, the fact that many of my students are well off and I have social responsibilities to my parents makes living expenses and travel fees difficult. However, they advised me to ask you since they couldn't pay the fee. I had financial liberty for a very important purpose. To improve my career in fashion design, I had moved to a renowned design business. Now that I had achieved a certain degree of success, my pay had skyrocketed. Furthermore, my pay and bonuses were growing quickly since I was so preoccupied with my job. My parents likely believed from the start that they could cover Ashley's tuition with my assistance because I had informed them of the employment change. Furthermore, since they were aware of the contribution, they most likely believed I could assist with the tuition as well. Thus, the monies that had been intended for Ashley's frivolous spending and relaxation were vanished. But I was no longer able to forgive her. Supporting the tuition would have been simple, but I turned down Ashley's request. I turned down my parents' offer when they reached out to me again a few days later. My heart sank even deeper when they called me and spoke in frantic, accusatory voices. I realized then that I was no longer able to go home. They didn't genuinely want my support as a family member. They were just relying on my money. Without a conversation, there was no justification for taking advantage of my savings. Almost every day, Ashley would call me in tears. I might have changed my mind if there had been even one heartfelt apology, but she always said, "Please pay for my tuition. I'll be expelled if this keeps up. My part-time work and scholarships are completely insufficient. What will everyone think in your opinion? What if a student as good as me is expelled? When I'm a doctor, I'll repay the loan. Please help me. We're family." There was a pattern to the messages left on the answering machine. One of the statements was unexpected. "I'll also let them know if you're concerned about not being able to return home." I immediately erased these messages from my smartphone after backing them up. After that, I messaged my sister and made the decision to cut off all communication with her. Those who despise others shouldn't be doctors, in my opinion. So I broke off communication with my family and ushered in a fresh spring. Ashley's second-year tuition was somehow covered by scholarships and loans from other family members, according to a relative who had been approached for money. She had to start working part-time because she had no more money to cover her living expenses. Juggling work and the enormous amount of studying she had to do every day, as well as the frequent tests and practices, proved to be more difficult than she had anticipated. Ashley eventually had to drop out 6 months later after failing numerous credits. In addition to helping with tuition, I had been sending money home. I ceased doing so without re-establishing contact after severing ties last year. Ashley returned to our parents, who were struggling financially and barely making ends meet, her pride completely destroyed. Ashley was capable academically, but the money needed to pay for her education had already been spent. She didn't, however, hunt for employment nearby. Instead, she spent her days playing games and venting her anger and isolation. I heard from a neighbor that voices arguing could be heard from the house at night, since our parents had always doted on Ashley. They seemed unable to stand up to her. When I saw my parents in the neighborhood, they always looked exhausted. People around them avoided contact and hardly ever spoke to them. One day, perhaps due to excessive stress, my father caused an unexpected incident on the train during his commute. He made inappropriate contact with a woman standing next to him, was noticed by other passengers detained on the spot, and arrested by the police. Fortunately, a settlement was reached, and it did not turn into a criminal case. However, due to this incident, my father was forced to resign from his job. My mother started looking for work, but having only part-time experience, she was unable to find a stable job that provided a steady income. My parents tried to contact me and even attempted to reach out through relatives, but it didn't go well. The content they asked the intermediaries to convey was reportedly intimidating. The relatives understood there were issues with my parents and told them, "Leave it to us," but eventually began ignoring their messages altogether. As a result, my connections with my family gradually faded, and I was finally able to regain a peaceful daily life. From what I've heard from relatives, there are bad rumors about Ashley, who is now reclusive, and my unemployed father, who looks frightening, causing them to be avoided by those around them. My mother, feeling overwhelmed by the circumstances, has vanished without a trace, and I can no longer get in touch with her. The remaining two, without any means of money, seem to be living nearly like homeless people. If there had been a warm relationship with the neighbors, it could have been somewhat soothing. However, given their prior attitudes, it's tough for them to get understanding from others around them. Meanwhile, I am effectively growing my profession in the design field. Recently, I've been selected to participate in high-profile projects, indicating a huge step ahead. This has encouraged me to finally launch an idea I've been mulling for a long. That plan is to take university admission tests. Since my funds have been improving nicely, I want to tackle this problem after my present project is accomplished. Looking to the future, I'm also contemplating creating my own business. I want to develop my expertise not only in design, but also in management. I'm pleased about this new task. Story 3. By the time she was 30, Sophia, a manager at Preston & Associates, had created the life she had always imagined. She was renowned for her keen intuition, leadership skills, and unmatched work ethic. 10 years of hard work paid off at her 19th floor corner office with a broad view of the busy city below. She reached this point of achievement as a result of every promotion, late night at work, and missed vacation. However, Sophia frequently pondered that success had its own price. Lila and Chloe, her younger sisters, had made different decisions. Lila was a 25-year-old mother of 2 children. Playdates and PTA meetings occupied her days. With a baby and a 3-year-old daughter, Chloe, 28, managed to balance family meals and diaper changes with surprisingly ease. Sophia observed their lives from a distance, following significant events via social media posts and group discussions. First words, first steps. Sophia felt proud of what she had done, but she was not involved in birthday celebrations. There was a persistent discomfort. She made her job choice, but she frequently questioned whether she had lost something intangible in the process. She frequently felt like the odd one out during family get-togethers, the one who didn't quite fit in. Her family did not purposefully exclude her. Although they were always proud of her achievements, the small disparity between their lives felt like an imperceptible barrier. Sophia had nothing to add to her sister's stories about teething babies or restless nights. She longed for their friendship and the experiences they shared that she was excluded from. Sophia's phone buzzed one clear Tuesday morning while she was going through a pile of reports at her desk. When name appeared on the screen, Sophia responded with her typical briskness. "Ash, hello," she heard Lila's chirpy voice. "Have a moment?" Sophia put down her pen for you and grinned. "Always. What is going on?" Before long, the conversation shifted to their mother's impending 58th birthday. Chloe and Lila had been discussing how to make it unique. Sophia eagerly listened as the idea of being involved in the planning made her heart sing. "We're keeping it simple this year," Lila said. "Just a family gathering at home, but we need everyone to chip in and take some time off to make it work." "Say no more," Sophia replied without hesitation. "I'll transfer my share today and block off my calendar. It'll be great to celebrate together." As she hung up the call, Sophia felt a rare sense of excitement for once. She wouldn't just be the distant sister, the one too busy with work to be present. This time she hoped things would be different. The dining room of Sophia's parents' home buzzed with a familiar chaos of a family gathering. Plates clinked as her mother fussed over serving everyone's favorite dishes. Her father told the same old jokes that still earned polite laughter, and her sisters chatted animatedly about their latest parenting escapades. Sophia sat at the table, quietly, enjoying the moment. It had been too long since she'd been surrounded by her family like this. As the evening fell, Lila tapped her glass with a spoon, begging for attention. "All right, everyone, listen up. We've got an announcement." Sophia's interest heightened as the room quieted. Layla, with a huge smile on her face, and glanced at Chloe, who gave her an encouraging gesture for Mom's 58th. "We've completed the plans," Layla started. "We're spending a week at Pine Ridge Resort." Excited discussion arose. Their dad instantly started reminiscing about his skiing days. Chloe began discussing clothes for the kids, and their mom thrilled at the possibility of a winter holiday. Sophia felt herself smiling too, imagining a week of togetherness, fun, and memories. "This is perfect," Sophia said. "My schedule is already blocked. I'm eager." For a brief moment, Lila's grin wavered, and Sophia saw Chloe avert her eyes. There was a strange feeling. Layla, however, paused and then pushed forward. Her voice was too informal. "We were actually hoping you could do us a great favor, Ash." Sophia scowled a little. "What sort of favor?" "Watching children." As though it were the most natural thing in the world, Chloe added her voice. "The kids adore you and Sophia, and you're so excellent with them. While we're at the resort, it will only last for a week. I take it you don't mind." The words struck Sophia in the stomach. She looked to her sisters in the hopes that someone would chuckle and call it a joke. However, there was simply the anticipation of her approval on their faces. No humor. "Hold on." Sophia spoke slowly while attempting to maintain a steady tone. "While you all celebrate at the resort, do you want me to stay behind and monitor all 5 children?" Layla waved a dismissive hand and said, "Come on, Ash. It's not really important. You get along well with them." "The point isn't that." Sophia's chest constricted as she answered. "I also want to rejoice. Mom's birthday is today." Chloe let out a sigh and looked at Layla. "Sophia? In any case, you'll be bored there. The kids would have more fun with you, and you're not a big skier. Are you bored?" Sophia was hearing things that she found hard to accept. "So you guys made this decision without consulting me at all?" "You don't really need a vacation from your family," Layla replied, her voice becoming patronizing. "You don't have a spouse or children. Yes, we do. This is our opportunity to unwind." The words struck like a slap, and Sophia felt the burden of 10 years of sacrifice pressing down on her as memories of missing holidays to support her parents raced through her head. Sending money home to assist her sisters while providing on-demand babysitting. She had always been dependable, accountable, unselfish, and had never demanded anything in return. "My time doesn't count because I don't have children?" Sophia inquired, her voice trembling with suppressed passion. Chloe rolled her eyes and murmured, "Don't be dramatic. All of us are contributing. This is only her portion." She acted as though she had an obligation to do this. Sophia's voice became stronger as she added, "I've always helped. However, this isn't helpful. You are all determining my function here." Uncomfortably, the table became silent. The tension was released as her mother cleared her throat. "They're only requesting a favor, honey. Families remain united." Sophia's annoyance was evident as she looked into her mother's eyes. "Family members also respect one another. They encompass one another. You didn't even consider asking me if I was comfortable with this." Clearly annoyed, Layla crossed her arms. "Why do you think this is so important? It's only a week. You've previously always said yes." After hearing those words, Sophia froze. She had always been expected to answer yes. Her sacrifices are often taken for granted. Something changed within her. To her surprise, she responded firmly, "No. I'm not going to do it." Accusations and protests broke out in the room. For the first time, however, Sophia had already made up her mind. As she sat there, she refused to let them determine her position. They blended their voices into a clamor of guilt-tripping and incredulity. Sophia came to a significant realization. This journey wasn't the only one. It was about her life being underappreciated and being ignored for years. She was drawing the line this time. Sophia gazed at her phone while she sat on the couch. She relived the family meal in her head, remembering their condescending demeanor and entitled demands, each word piercing her more deeply. She had prioritized everyone else before herself for years, going above and beyond to make room for everyone. However, something within her resisted giving in this time. Her laptop opened. She hovered her fingers over the keyboard. It's okay if they didn't want her to join in the celebration at the resort. For herself, she would do something else. In an hour, Sophia had purchased a first-class plane ticket, a beachfront hotel, a week-long trip to Florida, and every possible bit of freedom she could want. She was going to find her own happiness with the same funds and time she had allocated for the resort vacation. Sophia gave her place a final inspection the morning before she left. Everything was in its proper place. There was nothing in the refrigerator. The windows were locked. She consciously decided to leave her phone off for the next week and put it in her bag. No calls, no messages, no guilt. Sophia stepped out of the airport into the warm Florida breeze. Her mood is already improving due to the salty air. Her hotel was an ideal setting, a comfortable room with a view of the endless blue ocean from the balcony. She kicked off her shoes and walked barefoot along the shoreline that first afternoon. Waves lapped at her feet, and the cool sand squeezed between her toes. Her frazzled mind was calmed by their rhythmic crush. Sophia felt at peace for the first time in years. In Florida, every day was like a dream. As the sunrise painted the sky in shades of pink and orange, she began her mornings with coffee on the balcony. The afternoons were spent reading for pleasure, dining quietly at outdoor cafes, and perusing the charming beachside stores. She hadn't given herself that luxury in years. One evening, Sophia was sitting on the beach with a diary she had purchased from a nearby store as the sun began to set. She started writing about herself, her goals, her wants, and the person she wanted to be outside of everyone else's expectations, rather than about her job or her family's responsibilities. The burden she had borne for so long appeared to lighten with every day. Sophia wasn't someone's sister for the first time, daughter, or trustworthy backup. It was liberating to be her own self. Anarchy was developing at home. Sophie and her family arrived at her flat on the morning of the resort excursion, children and suitcases in tow. Anticipating that she would be prepared to assume her designated duty as the babysitter, they rang the doorbell. Rather, they encountered stillness. When Sophia didn't answer the phone, Layla was the first to call. Lila's voicemail began with the messages, "Sophia? We're outside. Will you be at the door? The children are becoming agitated." Chloe followed. "This isn't funny. Ash, get out. We will arrive late for check-in." Soon it became apparent that Sophia was not at home. Panic swiftly replaced confusion. The message's tone changed around mid-morning. "Daniel? Where are you, Sophia? You cannot just vanish in this manner. You are what we need." Anger replaced terror by the afternoon. "You self-centered witch, Layla? How could you harm us like this? Are you aware of what you have destroyed? Chloe, you are the reason why Mom's birthday is going so badly. It's unbelievable that you would act so immaturely." She received a stern message from her mother, who also jumped in. "I never imagined that you would prioritize yourself over your family. Sophia, I'm really disappointed in you." Sophia, meantime, was enjoying a fruity cocktail and tanning while relaxing on a lounge chair by the hotel pool. Her phone was still off and hidden in her backpack, out of the way of her newfound tranquility. For the first time, she didn't care what her family was saying, and she had no idea what they were saying. Sophia felt lighter than she had in years at the conclusion of the week. Her skin was shining from the Florida sun, but it was more than that. She had found the aspect of herself that she had not known was missing. The aspect that should be respected, loved, and most importantly, joyful. Her phone burst with missed calls, voicemails, and texts when she finally switched it on when she got home. She read the charges, guilt trips, and plain insults from her relatives as she scrolled through them. The messages didn't hurt as much as they used to. Rather, they confirmed what she already knew. They had never really considered her a person, merely someone they could depend on when it was convenient for them. Sophia exhaled deeply and set her phone on the counter. She refused to answer, Not now. She was more determined than ever. She had been the trustworthy one, the unselfish sister who never refused for years. She could see plainly now, though. It wasn't selfish of her to choose herself. It was essential. She was unpacking her bag. Her thoughts returned to the sea, the crash of the waves hitting the beach. She was not going back to her previous self because that week had been a turning point in her life. For the first time, Sophia was living her life as she saw fit. A few months later, Sophia had to drive to her parents' house to celebrate her mother's birthday. The consequences of her absence had been significant, and the resort getaway had long ago ended. Since their calls, texts, and Kurt had stopped, the family had seldom talked to her. Nevertheless, Sophia accepted her mother's invitation to a modest birthday party. At the very least, she thought it would be an opportunity to make amends. She brought a thoughtfully selected present with her as she entered the house, her mother's scrapbook, which had handwritten notes from every important event throughout her life. Sophia had dedicated hours to it, in the hopes that it would serve as a reminder of her mother's importance. In spite of everything, it was quieter than normal in the living room. Her father had been watching television. The children were running about as Chloe and Layla spoke in the corner. The house echoed with their laughing. Despite the obvious tension, Sophia forced a grin as she welcomed everyone. Sophia made an effort to strike up a conversation as the evening went on, but it was obvious that her sisters were avoiding her. Her 2-year-old mother was aloof and only spoke to her when it was absolutely necessary. Sophia remained optimistic, though, believing that when it came time for the cake, things may be better. Sophia volunteered to assist in bringing out the dessert when the time came. The candles on the cake flickered faintly as she carried it gingerly into the dining room. As Sophia set it in front of her mother, everyone crowded around. "Mom, happy birthday." With a kind gesture, Sophia gave her the knife. "Make a wish." After a moment of staring at the cake, her mother turned to face Sophia. The room became silent. Unspoken remarks weighed heavily on the mood. "Is this how you're making up for leaving us?" Sharply, her mother remarked. The quiet was broken by her voice. Sophia was taken by surprise and froze. "What?" "I heard you," her mother went on, her voice becoming more stern. "We were caught off guard by you, ruined my trip for my B-day, and now you believe that all will be resolved with a cake and a scrapbook." Although the remarks hurt, Sophia made an effort to remain composed. "I didn't leave anyone behind, Mom. All I had to do was establish limits." "Limits?" Her mother cut in, raising her voice. "You're referring to selfishness. You've evolved. Sophia, I didn't raise you like a daughter." As the charges mounted, Sophia's chest constricted. She looked around the room, but nobody defended her. Her sisters cast a downward glance. Their quiet says much. Abruptly, her mother snatched a handful of the cake. Anger distorted her face. "Are you curious about my opinion on your boundaries?" Sophia's mother smashed the cake in her face before she could respond. As icing trickled down Sophia's cheeks, cheers reverberated across the room. Despite the terrible humiliation, Sophia remained unflinching. Stunned, but determined, she stood there. Shaking hands, they wiped away the icing. Sophia inhaled deeply as the room fell eerily silent. At last, she spoke in a forceful but composed tone. "Mom, you know what? You're correct. I've evolved," Sophia said, her eyes unwavering in spite of the tears that threatened to spill. "I have prioritized this family throughout my life, to support you all. I sacrificed nights out, vacations, and even my own mental health. For what purpose? To receive this kind of treatment." Her mother parted her lips to speak. Sophia, however, raised a hand. "Let me finish, please. My answer has always been yes, always been the trustworthy one, always been a reliable individual. However, it has never been sufficient. Once, I made the decision for myself. The time I refused, you determined that I was the bad guy." The words were weighty and unforgiving as they lingered in the air. Sophia's voice grew softer as she glanced at her sisters. "I deserve respect, even if I love you all. I should not be viewed as merely someone you may employ when it suits you." Her mother's expression darkened. "It's not worth returning if you leave by that door." Despite the pain in her heart, Sophia acted without hesitation. I'll do whatever it takes to live my life as I see fit." Sophia then turned and moved in the direction of the entrance. Even when her mother yelled, she didn't turn around. Anger and resentment were evident in her voice. It felt terrible and liberating to hear the door close behind her. Sophia was standing on the porch outside. Her cheeks was reddened by the chilly night air. She inhaled deeply after wiping the last of the icing off her face. She felt lighter and more liberated than she had in years, despite the pain. As she made her way to her car, she had finally drawn a line and defended herself. Sophia was aware that everything will change at this moment. For the first time, she was treading the path on her own terms, even if it would not be easy, and that was worth everything, she knew. The confrontation's aftermath was both anticipated and draining. Sophia's phone was constantly buzzing with family notifications. Their dissatisfaction now manifested itself in flimsy social media messages. Lila's post. Family should always come first, yet some individuals overlook this. I'm so fortunate to have people that genuinely get what it means. Chloe's update. Thankful for family members that support them no matter what. There is no room for toxic individuals in our life. My kids learned to respect family from her mom's message, but I suppose not all of the teachings are retained. Tragic. Sophia, her chest constricted as she read each one, and then she put her phone down. These remarks may have caused the old Sophia to lose sleep as she mentally prepared answers and considered if she was really at fault. However, it is no longer the case. The manipulation had been exposed, and she had no intention of turning back. Sophia turned her energies within rather than outward. She joined a book club at a nearby cafe, and on a calm Saturday morning, she went to her first meeting. It seemed weird at first, but freeing to sit with strangers, drink coffee, and talk about novels. Her weekend was free from outside demands for the first time in years. She also began organizing her next journey, which would be a springtime solo trip to Europe. She didn't schedule, consult anybody, or seek permission. It was her choice, her time, her money, and every action she made to start again. It was like dropping a burden she was unaware that she had been carrying. She finally made the time to go to the theater by herself, something she had always wanted to do. As she reflected on her voyage, she poured her thoughts into the pages of her journal during peaceful evenings. Even with her newfound calm, Sophia frequently wondered about her nieces and nephews. She missed their unadulterated delight, their wide-eyed wonder, and their laughing. They were the only member of her family whom she genuinely wanted to stay with. She hoped that as kids grew up, they would comprehend her choice. Perhaps they might even see the same trends and decide differently for themselves. The family group chat caught Sophia's attention one evening as she was browsing through her phone. For weeks, it had lain dormant, an electronic memento of the connections she had formerly gone to such lengths to preserve. Her thumb lingered over the delete option as she gazed at it for a considerable amount of time. She touched it at last. The group was gone from her screen, leaving a blank area where the discussion had been. Sophia reclined, a feeling of closure keeping watch over her. Eliminating the conversation involved more than just getting rid of the messages. It represented her determination. She was not going to compromise her decision to uphold her dignity once more. For the first time, she had control over the future, even though it seemed unknown. In a silent but impactful confirmation of the life she was creating on her own terms, Sophia grinned to herself.